Story 1. So many in my life, honestly, but I will just quote good old Don Draper. Worker. I feel bad for you. Don. Not even making eye contact. I do not think about you at all. Leaves elevator. Story 2. On my bike. A child got in my way. He did not move and almost got hurt. He shouted after me, "Motherfucker." I shouted back, "You behave, son." He chased me. Story 3. The quote, "Nice execution. You are doing terrific," from Letterkenny always confuses the person insulting me. Story 4. My narcissistic manager said, "I bet you worried all weekend about how I would respond to whatever it was you did or said on Friday." I replied, "Wait, you honestly believe I think about you or this place for even 1 second on the weekend?" Story 5. Bessie Braddock, a member of parliament, apparently called Winston Churchill disgustingly drunk. Churchill's retort was, "I may be drunk, miss, but in the morning I will be sober and you will still be ugly." Story 6. I remember once I had a coworker who was older and we loved making fun of each other. One day, I was joking around with another coworker, pretending to have a microphone like a news reporter. The older man happened to come in, so I said, "Oh look, here we have the oldest man in the entire world. Tell us, sir, what is it like to have experienced the entire evolution of mankind?" He didn't miss a step. The moment I pretended to put the microphone to his face for him to answer, he said, "Well, we were doing just fine until you came along." He won that one and we all thought it was hilarious. Story 7. On World Wrestling Federation television in the 1980s, Bobby the Brain Heenan once said, "You make me wish your parents had never met." Fantastic. Story 8. In the 1930s, Dorothy Parker was a writer famous for being part of the Algonquin vicious circle. A snarky, famous actress opened the door to usher her through, saying, "Age before beauty." Parker replied, "Pearls before swine," and swept past. Story 9. One time, my late wife and I got into a huge argument. She got so angry at me that she said, "You know what? You can suck my dick." I had no response to that. Argument over. I was not expecting those words to come from her mouth. I do not even remember what we were arguing about. Story 10. Two mechanics I knew pretty well were working on my car. One is a big guy and amateur boxer but not very bright. The other had been having some troubles with his girlfriend and asked the boxer, jokingly, if he would smack her around or something to that effect. The boxer replied, "I don't do heavy bag work. It slows me down." This was even funnier because the boxer is normally pretty slow-witted. Story 11. I had a man tell me he would have my job. I told him he would not want it because you have to deal with too many unpleasant people. Story 12. I was sitting in a pub chatting with my friend when a man came and sat next to me and said, "Before you get your hopes up, I have a girlfriend." I replied, "Before you get your hopes up, I have standards." I was pretty proud of myself for that one. Story 13. Overly condescending supervisor reviewing my work asked, "Can I ask a stupid question?" Me, during my final week at that position, replied, "You seem qualified." Story 14. I was younger and being disciplined at work. I got caught drinking on the job. The general manager wanted to meet with my chef to discuss my future there. We all sat down, and the general manager was asking for my dismissal. My chef said that isn't happening, and they would take care of any disciplinary actions. He said the conversation was over and they could leave. The general manager looked at my chef and said, "We are friends, chef. We should be able to have a discussion about this." Stone-faced, my chef said, "I have been on this planet for 56 years and can count on one hand how many friends I have. What makes you think you are one of them?" I laughed. The general manager left. Story 15. Years ago, I stopped at a drugstore on the way to work and tried a tester cologne. When I got to work, my boss said out loud in front of everyone, "Holy cow, did you bathe in cologne? You smell like a male prostitute." I waited until everyone stopped laughing and then asked him, "How do you know what a male prostitute smells like?" Story 16. When my brother was in 3rd grade, a 5th grader came up and asked him why he was so fat. My brother looked at the older kid and said, "Because every time I see your mom, she gives me a biscuit." That kid cried. Story 17. Walking through the chow line at work, a man who constantly talked was behind me. He started giving me some trouble about taking too long, and I said, "Do you ever think about anything you do not say?" Story 18. Sister, her ex, and I were in the car ride home together. I can't remember where the conversation was at the time, but I do remember it was sudden and kind of out of nowhere. I'm still confused to this day. Her ex looked over to her and said, "You know, it could be worse. At least you're not the middle child." He was referring to me. I'm the middle child. I snapped back, "Yeah, well, better than being the only child." Not exactly the best comeback I've ever had, per se, and I took it in stride as a joke, snapping back quickly without much thought. But he went silent. I learned later that being an only child was a serious soft spot for him. But hey, I guess my heart of steel comes from having siblings. Story 19. Kid A to Kid B. Your penis is the size of a Tic Tac. Kid B. Yeah, that's why your mom's breath smells so good. Story 20. Me. Picking ice cream. Person. Hey, babe, what else can you lick? Me. The blood off my knife when I rip your organs out. Story 21. I was 18, working in construction, and this man from Argentina asked me what I was going to do on the weekend. I said I hoped I would have a good time. He said, "Oh, you are going to regret it." Story 22. Someone told me, "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." I replied, "You do not have the power to hurt my feelings." Story 23. In 6th grade, back in 1980, I asked the kid sitting next to me, "What are you looking at?" His reply was, "Not much." Story 24. I ran the suspension room in a high school for a few years. I was threatened with serious bodily harm weekly. One of my regular students threatened to kick my ass for probably the 50th time that year. I told him, "Sit down and be quiet, Junior. You don't scare me. I've dealt with worse than you." Took a minute for him to process that. It worked though. Story 25. This happened about 20 years ago and probably hasn't aged well. A group of us were at a pub. One of the guys in our group, Aaron, started talking to some women at a table near us. Another guy who was there, and fairly drunk, apparently didn't like this and came over to the table, becoming aggressive towards Aaron. Aaron was doing his best to defuse the situation, but the guy kept going, taunting Aaron with "Go on, hit me." It was at this point that we first noticed Aaron was being hassled. Before we could step in to help, Aaron snapped and slapped the man hard. The sound of the slap caused the whole pub to go quiet. The man just sat there, stunned. Then the drunk man eventually said, "You slapped me." Aaron replied, "If you're going to act like that, I'll slap you like that." It was one of those moments where everyone laughed, mostly just us and the women at the table, and it was enough for the drunk man to scurry away and stop hassling Aaron. Story 26. I have more than once told people, your parents must have had a problematic relationship to have produced such a person. Story 27. Admittedly, this was done to provoke someone with whom I have personal issues. Backstory. This man likes to get women drunk and sleep with them while they are unconscious. He has never been in trouble for it, even with the police involved and the victim being a 15-year-old while he was in his 20s. He is very homophobic and a truck driver. At a mutual friend's birthday, where I was told he would not be present, hence why I stopped hanging out with people who tolerate that behavior, he showed up to dinner and was seated across from me. He kept trying to talk to me and my then girlfriend, now wife. He started talking about work and how he had to take a load in the morning. My reply was, "Oh, that's nice. Your boyfriend is going to be in town." Attempting to salvage his self-image, he immediately shouted, "A semi-load! A semi-load!" I had one more for him. Well, I don't need to know how hard he is. He then tried to jump the table with a knife. Fortunately, he is small and his friends grabbed him midair and threw him back into his seat. I am a foot taller and about 120 pounds heavier than him. Story 28. Lady Astor said, "Winston, if you were my husband, I would poison your tea." Winston Churchill replied, Nancy, if I were your husband, I would drink it. Story 29. Regardless of your political views, Barack Obama roasting Donald Trump and saying, at least I will go down as a president. Then Donald Trump running and winning is probably the hardest comeback achievable. Story 30. My grandma's sister came around during a holiday at my grandma's when all the family was there. She said hello to everyone, looked at my cousin and said, well, you've put on weight. Without pausing, he replied, ditto. That is when my aunt left to go back home. Story 31. A line from a Garfunkel and Oates song. I would not touch your genitalia if I had been poisoned and the antidote was in your sperm. Story 32. I was with my older cousin at a park when a man walked up and exposed himself to us. My cousin looked at him for what seemed like an eternity, then looked him in the eye and said in a deadpan voice, buddy, I've seen better on a dog. 13-year-old me thought that was pretty cool. Story 33. You have two brain cells fighting for third place on which is the smartest. Is education illegal where you are? Does waste just grow inside you for you to pull out and use whenever you want later? Story 34. I was waiting in the lobby at my doctor's office many years ago. There was a little girl and boy playing. They were clearly the children of two different mothers. Boy. Girls have Barbie doll brains. Boys have car brains. Girl. Barbie drives a Corvette. The mothers and I all burst out laughing. That little girl was sharp if I ever saw one. I hope she continues to tolerate no fools. Story 35. During COVID-19, a man not wearing a mask in a Walmart. Long story short, I stopped abruptly in front of his cart. He hit me with it, and it stopped immediately. I asked if he had a problem, and he ducked down an arts and crafts aisle. I said, good idea. You look like you haven't felt anything for a while. Story 36. Overheard. You are so useless you would fail at breathing if it were not automatic. I did not catch what prompted that, but the phrase stuck with me. Story 37. My boss tried to insult me and said something about my hair. I said, you are just mad because I still have mine. Story 38. In high school in the mid-1990s, I used a complex word in math class. The popular girl behind me said, God, what do you do? Go home and read the dictionary at night. Without missing a beat, I replied, yeah, I've got the whole thing tattooed on my body. 3 solid minutes of laughter followed from everyone, including the 50-plus-year-old female teacher. Felt good. Story 39. Jesus Christ, Jimmy, if I knew you were going to be this dumb, I would have made your mom swallow you just like your brothers and sisters. Story 40. A guy I know who was a little overweight but a great person had problems with another man that went on for months. The other man would not leave him alone. It was always, hey, why are you so fat? He wouldn't say anything. One day, the bully was having a celebratory drink, and my friend was being picked on. He surprised us all by standing right in front of the bully, and the room with about 30 people went silent. He said, Tony, every day you go to work, I sneak into your house and have passionate sex with your wife, and every time I give her an orgasm, she gives me a biscuit. He then patted his stomach and walked off. I'm sure it's from a film, but it was amazing. Story 41. When I was working as a server while attending college, my manager said in front of everyone, I have 2 things, a large ego and a big mouth. I responded, why don't you keep your ego to yourself and leave? Story 42. You can watch the whole 1 minute and 41 seconds video or just fast forward to the important part at about 1 minute and 25 seconds. Story 43. I used to tell my college freshman class to trade papers with someone less attractive than themselves. Then I would choose a good-natured guy and say, gee, George, why did everyone turn to you? One year, a girl in the front row immediately looked at me and said, because you did not have a paper. That was the funniest thing I ever heard a student say. Story 44. British comedian Jimmy Carr, having just been insulted by a heckler, said, are you waiting for my comeback? You'll have to scrape it off your mother's teeth. Story 45. Belligerent customer. What is wrong with you? Coworker. A lot, fool. I have never laughed so hard in my life. Story 46. For someone with your skill set, you are doing great. Keep being outspoken and I will jiggle my fly. You are about as quick as a frozen river. You would try to open the hatch in a submarine, thinking it is a sunroof. Story 47. My boyfriend jokingly said he would be with my father once. I responded, someone has to, because my birther's name won't. I am shocked he still jokingly threatens me with that. It backfires every time. Story 48. When a girl tells me she has a boyfriend, I reply by saying, cool, I have a mathematics test later. When she looks at me confused, I say, sorry, I was just thinking of 2 things we could cheat on tonight. Story 49. It's one that I often used when I was younger. Generic mom insult. Come back. I don't have a mother. My dad and I share yours. It's versatile too because if they dislike a certain group or sports team, just replace dad with that group or sports team. Story 50. Watching Still Game years ago, I actually spat my drink out the first time I heard this. Bobby the barman. You're putting the beef on Jack. Calling him fat. Jack. Aye, that's right. Every time I sleep with your wife, she makes me a sandwich. Story 51. Heard during a local Australian rules football game. After being harassed all day by a thug, my teammate said, I'm not sure which is smaller, your IQ or your bank balance. The thug then punched him in the face. Story 52. Long story short, this man and his 5 friends followed me and my 1 friend to the bar parking lot. They were intoxicated and looking to start a fight. As we got in the car, the man yelled a slur at me. I responded by making a similar remark about his mother. He was mistaken. I am bisexual. I never discovered his mother's preference. Story 53. Katharine Hepburn, after being aboard the German ship Louise in the movie The African Queen, was told that no one could come down the river. Nevertheless, she persisted. Story 54. Mother's Day 2006. I'll never forget it. I was working at Cheddar's. We were extremely busy. Everyone in the kitchen was working at full capacity. We were screaming, cussing at a critical level. The district manager was losing his mind, melting down, cracking under the pressure. I was at the first station around the corner, the Flat Grill. He stormed around the corner and yelled, everyone stop cussing. You're causing a hostile work environment. Without skipping a beat, I said, if I pull out my private parts, it'll be a hostile work environment. The greatest part was he didn't know who said it. He flipped. You 3 in the office now. He threatened to fire all of us right there if we didn't admit who it was. I admitted it. He said, we're going to fill out paperwork when the day's over. We never did. That one stuck with me. Story 55. Norm Peterson on Cheers told Sam it was a dog-eat-dog world and we were all wearing milk-bone underwear after Sam asked him how his day was going. Story 56. This one requires some setup. I was sitting in a burger joint waiting for my food when a woman came in and it was immediately clear that she was already upset. She looked around for someone to take her order and sighed when she did not find anyone. The girl had stepped away not 10 seconds ago. The girl came back and the woman started to order but was frustrated by the fact that she did not speak English. This being New Mexico, that was not particularly unusual, and although I did not speak a word of Spanish, I managed to order my lunch there almost every day without issue. She eventually ordered, growing more infuriated by the moment, and the girl disappeared into the back to prepare it. It was not even 30 seconds before the woman was huffing and puffing again, starting the hello routine. The girl came back to try to explain how this worked but was also frustrated and, finally past her limit, she cut loose with a string of invective that neither I nor the woman it was directed at needed translated to get the gist of. The woman puffed up to an even greater degree of righteous indignation and demanded, "What did you say?" Realizing she was not going to get an answer from the girl who did not speak English, she turned to me and the couple of other people in the dining area to demand even more shrilly, "What did she say?" In moments like this, we like to imagine that some fully formed, witty, perfectly tailored reply would just pop magically into our head to be spat out for the occasion, but we all know that never happens. Only this time it did. I long past sick of listening to her pitch a fit, Opened my mouth, not having any idea what I was going to say. What came out was, what she said was, sit your fat ass down and wait quietly for your food like the rest of us before I call the Coast Guard to tow it back out to sea. It was the closest I have ever gotten to actually watching someone's head explode. She choked and spluttered and practically ran out of that restaurant. I got a standing ovation from the other customers and my lunch for free. Story 57. In high school, I was very emotional and kept to myself because I had difficult things going on. One day, I walked past some unpleasant people. One of them said, "Oh, look, it's the overweight girl," and laughed. I took a moment, removed my headphones, and said, "The only reason I'm this chubby is because every time I am with your mother, she gives me a cookie. They're good, and so is she." I put my headphones back on, threw out my energy drink, and left. I'm not usually that cool, but that was one time I was. The best part? He appears in my recommended friends on Facebook. Guess who is also overweight now? Story 58. I was a high school freshman in algebra class, and we also had a sophomore who was retaking the class. He was a bit of a wise guy and often made rude comments about people. One day, he was talking disrespectfully to the teacher and acting smart. The teacher was explaining why algebra might be important for future careers. The sophomore said algebra was dumb and that he did not need to think to make money. This is where he set himself up. "Oh," the teacher said, "what work would you do to get paid without thinking?" The sophomore gave probably the dumbest answer I have ever heard. "I'll just sleep, I get paid to sleep," he said, grinning as if he was being clever and made sense. The teacher's response was priceless. "I was thinking being a male prostitute," she said with a serious expression. The whole class reacted with laughter while the sophomore stayed silent for the rest of the class. Story 59. Martina Navratilova once said that Martina Hingis should not travel with her boyfriend when she was on tour because he would serve as a distraction. Martina Hingis replied, "What would she know about having a boyfriend? Best comeback ever." Story 60. I'm a large man. Okay? I weigh 500 pounds, but I have a naturally wide frame, so I don't look that heavy. I'm lucky that way. So here goes. A city bus driver who drives the same route every day has always been unpleasant, but I can't take a different route to the same place. Person A. How was your morning? Person B. Not too bad. I had a couple of pancakes for breakfast with some eggs since I'm broke. Person A. Oh, sounds good. But broke? You don't look like you're broke. Looks at my gut. Person B. Well, I'm sorry your day seems bad again, but you work for the city, so act like it. I'm a big guy, so what? I can lose weight, but you can't lose ugliness. He looked like a troll. I got kicked off the bus. Story 61. You're overweight. The only reason I'm overweight is because every time I have relations with your mother, she makes me a cheeseburger. That nearly got me into a fight once. Story 62. I was 14 and playing one of my first shows with my high school band. As we were preparing to play our first song, a girl yelled out, "I bet you like disrespect." Without thinking, I responded, "Well, I like mine." It doesn't seem like much now, but for a very shy teenager, I think I did pretty well with that off-the-cuff rebuttal. Thousands of gigs later, I have definitely gotten more comfortable with hecklers, but that one has certainly stuck with me. Story 63. This comes from my husband. The lead man at his job was getting frustrated that no one was paying attention, so he quizzed my husband randomly. "What have I said so far?" My husband replied, "Nothing of importance so far." He attests that everyone chuckled, and I don't doubt it. That lead man was clueless at best and rude at worst. Story 64. The best thing I ever said in the military was, "I am going to put my boot so far up your back. We will make a proctologist rich removing it." Story 65. One of my friends was making jokes and lightly roasting me. He then said something like, "You won't amount to anything," but in a lighter way. I wasn't going to respond, knowing that these jokes were just lighthearted. However, the people around me were encouraging me to respond, so I said, "Obama is brighter than your future." Story 66. I was in a group chat with a few friends. One girl was gossiping about another behind her back. Everyone found out and they confronted each other in the group chat. One said, "Next time you have something to say it to my face." The gossip responded, "Which one?" Story 67. I was at work. I don't talk much because I am an introvert. I had to get something from two new hires who were talking. We'll call them Alpha and Juliet. Alpha. Hey. My name. Me, hey. You remembered my name fast. I've only seen you here for maybe 1 second. Alpha. Yeah, I want to learn your name so I can call it when you start shooting everybody and then I'll get saved. Me, you're going to need more than that. The girl, Juliet, he was talking to laugh so loud I really think it could have hurt someone's ears. The guy had a look of pure defeat. His jaw was open. When I came in the next day, someone asked me what happened. I asked what they heard, and a third person burst out laughing trying to repeat the exchange. I am not sure why he chose that as his first joke to tell me the second time he met me, but it worked out. Story 68. I made a joke at my adult son's expense. Nothing mean, just goofing. Then I stumbled over my words while trying to make another joke about blurting funny stuff that comes to mind, so I don't deprive the world of my sparkling wit. Sarcastically. My son gave me a side eye. He said, you barely graced the world with that sentence just now. I laughed. Ha! You son of a bitch! My son smirked and looked at me pointedly. Well, yes, I suppose I am. Story 69. I met my cousin at my uncle's funeral. He has treated me badly in the past. He is skinny, and his new girlfriend, who is much bigger, said she loves him but can be very angry at times. I told her to just roll over in her sleep and that should do the trick. Story 70. A girl at my job told a man he was overweight. He instantly responded by calling her big-nosed, zit-faced, and stubby-legged. It was an intense exchange. Story 71. My cousin works for the same organization I do, quite by accident. I've been here longer, and at one point we worked in the same department. Someone from another department came by when I was there, but my cousin was not, and somehow it came up that we are related, which this person didn't know. He said we didn't look alike, which is understandable because I am adopted. But I got to say, not all black people look alike, and it is to date my proudest conversational achievement. Story 72. The patient called one of my nurses a rude name for not giving them something. The nurse responded by mimicking a cow while laughing. The patient was very unimpressed. Story 73. My friend borrowed my stereo for several years. When she no longer needed it, I joked that she had stolen it. She replied, "Possession is 9/10 of the law," and I responded, "And you are 9/10 of an asshole." Still proud of that one. Story 74. A short, plump, bald man worked 2 floors above and 2 offices away from me. He saw me in an office and said, "Harimp." He came to our office lobby a couple of hours later and said, "I couldn't help being short with you." "That's okay, James. You couldn't be fat with me either." I rolled off my chair laughing. The rest of the office was laughing. "And you couldn't be fat either." He never forgave me. Worth it. Story 75. I have a coworker who is offended by nearly everything. I said, "I am going to start calling you Charmin because you are ultra soft." Story 76. A security guard, Latino, stopped me and insisted on searching my purse as I exited a store he was guarding. He must have been bored because there was no reason to think I was shoplifting. It became unpleasant because he physically blocked me from leaving the store. I worked hard to control my anger, but as I exited, "I am black." I cursed him out in Spanish, and one of the other security guards, also Latino, laughed at him. Story 77. I still laugh at my brother's comeback. The oldest got braces on his teeth. The younger brother told him, "You look like a monkey with those braces." The oldest replied, "What's your excuse?" I still chuckle about that one. It's a running joke to say, "What's your excuse?" Story 78. Names I give people. My old neighbor got the top 2 Macho Man Randy average after he tried to flex his biceps at me once and post no home when he got evicted. I looked him right in the eye and said, "Listen here, post no home." Story 79. Appreciate the input. Going to go ahead and ignore it now. That sounded better in your head. Should have left it there. Appreciate the enthusiasm. Going to pivot back to relevance. Story 80. My friends and I were joking around about me being promiscuous and them being immoral. She responded that she at least gets paid for sex, and I replied, including me? Me too. Story 81. I love it when someone says, I don't think I know, because I get to say my favorite response, I don't think you know either. Story 82. If you wanted my comeback, you should have asked. I would have wiped it off your sister's chest last night. Story 83. He is not even female, and he has 2 lips bigger than mine. I said this laughing out loud. I was watching SummerSlam when a wrestler came out in a very unflattering outfit. Story 84. Careful not to cut yourself on all that edge. I like accompanying it with an initial thoughtful grimace. Story 85. A student was smarting off. I said, oh, you think so, huh? Kid, I don't think. I know. Me, I don't think you know either. Story 86. When someone talks about your mom, say, I don't have a mom. That's why Brad and I share yours. Brad is one of your friends. Story 87. Kick you so hard up the arse with my Doc Martens you're gonna think they made hats. Story 88. I was the victim of this. I was complaining to my friend about a restaurant I liked closing, and I paraphrased a line by Homer Simpson. I'm a white male, age 18 to 49. Everyone's supposed to listen to me. My friend replied, yes, but you spend like a Japanese female, age 12 to 17. Story 89. I live near Chicago. I was a physical fitness instructor and would visit small consignment and thrift shops trying to find a leotard. This was many years ago. One day, I was there wearing a bodysuit because it made it easier to try on clothes since the shops had no dressing rooms. A woman came up to me and said, how do I get to look like you? I looked her up and down and said, stop eating. Thank goodness. 22 years ago, I moved down south and became a much nicer person. Story 90. The classic. My boyfriend told me to get in the kitchen and make him food. What is a good comeback? The only thing you need to say is a goddamn sandwich. Best comment ever made, in my opinion. Story 91. My 5-year-old does the typical you when my wife and I give each other a kiss. It happened yesterday, and without missing a beat, I said, try kissing her. The timing was amazing. Story 92. Was told to go and forget myself. Replied, if I could do that, I would not be driving a bus and making more money. Story 93. If I wanted a comeback from you, I would wipe it off your lips. Also, you are as useful as a fishnet condom or a steel life jacket. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.